Good afternoon to you. 506 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, former Governor Scott Walker from Wisconsin. He joins us this hour at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. You know, we haven't heard much from Joe Biden's doctor, but we have heard quite a bit from his other doctor.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the... And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
Yeah.
Yes.
That screeching was the most coherent thing that came out of either Joe or Jill Biden last Thursday night. But there is Jill complimenting her husband on literally answering questions. Although he didn't really do that. She lied about that, too. But what's she up to? Let's bring in Mary Rooke now, one of my favorite people. She's a commentary and an analysis writer for the Daily Caller, and she joins us on the phone. Hello, Mary.
Hey, Vince. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So what is Jill Biden up to here? What are you observing from the outside?
Well, it kind of looks like she's the second First Lady Edith Wilson, where she's just has taken over Biden's presidency. It's clear he's not doing well mentally. And so she's decided to just take over. There's that really famous photo of her on Air Force One where she's like prepping for G7. And she's sitting behind the president's desk with all the notebooks out and all that stuff. And you kind of wonder to yourself, where is President Biden? Well, we all know where he is. He's sitting in the back having a snack, being told he's such a good boy.
Yeah, it's like the parent who does the homework for the kid and then sends them off to school and the kid learned nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's been wild to watch these last couple of days, and now we're hearing that Hunter Biden is a special advisor to President Biden in the White House now, being there every day, annoying the staffers, making sure that his father is well taken care of. But in reality, I think he's just protecting himself in all of this.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that. Jill Biden is definitely the character that the media keep telling us is the most important figure here, that whatever the family is going to do will be up to Jill. If Joe's going to decide to not be president anymore, it's going to be up to Jill. Isn't that kind of an amazing thing? I mean, this is a person who's the First Lady of the United States. It's not a real job. It's just merely a title for the wife of the president. And yet she seems to have a lot more power than Joe does.
Oh, for sure. And I think the reality is that Jill does not want to let go of any of the perks that come with being First Lady. And so she's going to push her husband out there into the limelight, into all of these very stressful, very taxing, job details in order to ensure that she gets her presidential details. She gets all these designers falling at her feet. She gets to be on the cover of Vogue, and she gets to do all these things where people find her important because she understands the moment her husband leaves office, there's nothing waiting for them on the other side. There's no fawning. There's no fanfare. There's nothing for them. They're not one of them. They're not one of the Obamas, the Clintons, the Bushes. There's not going to be, a big presidential, following after they leave. And so I think that she is just trying to milk this for as long as she possibly can.
Mary Rooke, you have a husband. Would you do this to your husband? How should we view Jill Biden's behavior and how she's treating her husband here?
I was thinking about this yesterday when I was writing a piece about it. And I was thinking, even in our worst fights, even in the time where I have probably been more mad at him than I care to admit, I could never, ever humiliate him on the national stage the way Jill humiliates Joe. It is unthinkable for a loving wife to continue to allow him. I mean, you're talking about not just in America, but on the world stage, people are looking at him like this guy is a vegetable. They're making fun of him. They're, talking about the way he walks and his staggering speech and the way he forgets where he is on stage. I could never put my husband into that world and into that level of humiliation. Well, it would hurt me as a wife.
But you'd be able to cope with it if you knew that what they were saying were lies. If you knew that all of those criticisms that were incoming were not true, and that you knew that your husband was a man that was not being described, you'd stand by him. But here, the reality is those criticisms are true, and no one knows that better than Jill Biden. She sees it firsthand, and yet she still pushes him out there for herself.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look at the attacks that former President Trump goes under. He has the same claims that he's forgetful, that he's losing his mind, that he's old and all of these things. And you don't see Melania going out there and going, oh, good job, Trump. You answered all the questions on that debate. Look how good you did. Here's a snack. You're not seeing that kind of, placating from her, because it's just not true. But when you see Jill go and do that, it makes it even more obvious that what we're all seeing is the truth. And what Joe's going through is just like the saddest possible thing inside of family. And to have the entire family rally around and continue to push him forward and continue to push him to campaign is honestly sick.
Yeah, and trust me, I am. It's very hard for me to feel sympathy for Joe Biden, because I'm totally scandalized by what the destruction he has wrought in our country. And so even in those moments where I'm like, oh man, this is a raw deal for him, I have to shake myself out of it. I'm like, wait a second, all the crap he's done to us after all of that, and yet there is a sense here, as I'm listening to you describe this, how isolated must that guy be? I mean, not even his wife cares about him. And the knives are out. The knives are out for his presidency right now, all around him.
Oh, yeah. And then if you think about it, so you've got the entire Democratic Party machine just kind of pushing towards this get Joe out mantra. And then you have his two closest people in his life, his son and his wife, sitting there going, oh, no, you still have it. You can still do it. I can't imagine, like, in his moments of clarity, when he looks around and he realizes, like, I chose wrong. This woman does not love me. This woman does not want to take care of me. And sickness and health meant nothing to her. It was more like empower and elitist. That's the most important thing.
It's really worrisome. As you mentioned, you have a column this week. Lady McBiden desperately clinging to power as husband crumbles before her eyes. And you do point out this Vogue cover this week. I don't know why they even did this to begin. Well, yes, I do. I know why they did it. They're full of themselves, and they think that's the way to handle a campaign. But this Vogue magazine cover, on the quote on it, it says, "We will determine our future," on the front page. And most people are going to see that and think that's Jill Biden declaring that only Joe and I get to decide what happens to this country. And meanwhile, she's wearing what looks to be a very expensive dress or suit or whatever. It's like a blazer dress. It looks really expensive. I think the Free Beacon, what did they bill that at, Corey? Is $12,000? It was something like $12,000 she's wearing. And yet the two of them keep on posing as, they're just like you.
Yeah, and it's obviously like very transparent. The American people see that it's the power and the riches for me and nothing for you type of movement that they've got going on there. When they say things like, we will determine our future, I definitely think that's a shot at, the machine coming after them. There's no mistaking that this came out the weekend after his terrible debate. She wants to have a show of power and say, we're going to cling to this as hard as we possibly can. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to show the American people that while they're struggling going to the grocery store, while they're struggling at the gas station, while they're struggling to pay their energy bills, I have enough.
Yeah, although I think if that's the case, if she really thinks that they're going to win, meaning her power by keeping Joe there, I think she's in for something else, because the left, when it comes to power, it's by any means necessary. They're running into a buzzsaw right now, and it's just wild.
I couldn't agree more. I think that the problem is that they're clinging on so desperately that how do they get Joe to let go? And it's really not how do they get Joe, how do they get Jill and Hunter to let go?
Yeah. Well, you saw Nancy Pelosi today. She's calling for a cognitive test for Joe Biden and declared on MSNBC that this may not just have been an episode. He may have a, quote, condition. If that's any indication of the way Democrat elites are handling this right now, they're coming after him, and quickly. It's pretty amazing to watch. Mary Rooke over at the Daily Caller, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate that and your excellent insights.
Thanks so much for having me on, Vince.
It's Mary Rooke. She's the best. All right. There's also another piece here. There's everyone's coming out of the woodwork now after years of just really not focusing on any of this, reporting on any of it, or telling you anything. You've been able to divine this out by merely opening your eyes and watching videos. Oh, the president looks like crap. Yeah, that's a good assumption. Here's a Politico piece today. Headline, we've all enabled the situation. Democrats turn on Biden's inner sanctum post-debate. They say that over the course of his presidency, Joe Biden's small clutch of advisors have built an increasingly protective circle around him, limiting his exposure to the media end outside advice, an effort to manage public perceptions of the oldest person to ever hold the office and tightly control his political operation. Let me pause here on this for a moment. Listen to what they're describing. They've created a cocoon around Biden. They don't allow him to engage with the outside world. He's not allowed to have outside voices talk to him. Nobody can witness what he's actually like behind closed doors. Everything that I just detailed there, and that I'm quoting from this political piece, is the polar opposite of Donald Trump. Is the literal opposite of who Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is the guy who routinely takes outside advice. Donald Trump is the guy who will see someone on a rope line or meet someone in retail politics or be out in the world, just out in the country. He will talk to people. He will ask for their advice. It doesn't matter what their station in life is. He's interested in their opinions. He'll bring them back. He'll consult with advisors. Is this something feasible? How do we help that guy? I'm not inventing any of this. You can talk to anybody who's ever worked with or around or even discussed anything with Trump. Corey and Gannon, I love referring to this story. Corey, you met Trump, right? Corey went outside. He was holding up a pro-Trump sign right outside of his golf club in Virginia. Trump was there at the time. Trump sent out a golf cart to pick Corey up. And Corey, did he know who you were at the time? Is this like, oh, there's Corey and Ganamort. I know the influence he wields. Get him in here. I need to talk to him. Nothing like that. He just said, there's a guy out there. He's supporting me. That's great. They sent a golf cart for Corey. They pick up Corey. They bring him back. You walk into the clubhouse. There's Trump sitting at a desk, and Trump starts asking you for what you think. I think you told this story on the air, so I'm okay to tell this. He asked you what you thought of Lindsey Graham. He wanted your assessment of him, right? And he said, oh, did you say that? Oh, Trump's, okay. Let me just relay the quote accurately. Apparently, Trump told Corey that he thought that Graham was so much better than since John McCain died. He said to Corey, he says it to Corey. He meets Corey. He has no idea who he is. All he knows is a nice guy. He's supporting me. Bring him on in. They're having a real conversation. Trump's being totally candid with him, wants his thoughts, his advice. This is not an isolated incident. This has happened over and over and over again. That is not Biden. That's not the world that they've created around Biden. Trump, he wants to talk. He wants to talk. Why do you think he's doing so well? That is quite obviously one of the reasons. Is because the guy, these rallies, when Trump gets up on a stage and he starts talking to people and he starts saying something, a good example of this is Drain the Swamp. Drain the Swamp was not his idea. Do you know how we know that? Because he said it. He would explain to people that some of his political advisors came up with Drain the Swamp for D.C. But something Trump really enjoyed was the crowd went wild when he said Drain the Swamp. And he's like, all right, I'm going to work that in. It was an unusual moment because normally it's his own kind of freestyling. He comes up with a nickname or a phrase. And people respond well to it. He goes with it. But somebody else had suggested this to him. And he went with it. And he ended up telling the crowd, this is the way, all of these rallies, the left doesn't watch them. They refuse to. But if they did, they would learn something. He goes through his greatest hits. He's like trying to figure out, what the crowd's into. What do they like? He's actually taking the temperature. It's audience feedback. He's measuring. He wants to see if he's headed in the right direction, if they like what he's up to. Very different thing for Biden. Politico says inside the White House, Biden's growing limitations have become apparent long before his meltdown in last week's debate. Yeah, no kidding. With the senior team's management of the president growing more strictly controlled as his term has gone on. During meetings with aides who are putting together formal briefings that they deliver to Biden, some senior officials have at times gone to great lengths to curate the information being presented in an effort to avoid provoking a negative reaction. In other words, Biden will fly off the handle. Biden will go crazy. Quote, it's like, you can't include that. That will set him off. Or put that in. He likes that, said one senior administration official. It's a Rorschach test, not a briefing, because he is not a pleasant person to be around when he's being briefed. It's very difficult. And people are scared bleepless of him. Of Biden. They're scared of him. Because he goes crazy if somebody says something he doesn't like. The official said, quote, he doesn't take advice from anyone other than those few top aides, and it becomes a perfect storm because he just gets more and more isolated from their efforts to control it. Now, again, this is, if we compare him to to Trump, during the Trump era, there were efforts by people around Trump to stop him from seeing things, to stop him from talking to people. That did happen during the Trump era. Oh, no, he might get a crazy idea from some random American. And to the extent that he could, Trump tried to break through that. And hopefully he has more success this term. Look at me talking about it as if he won already. But hopefully he has more success should he be granted another chance in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And, but there are always people, there are often people, you see it in every administration, who are trying to control the flow of information, the access to the president. That does happen. But this cocoon they've built around Biden is insane. It's totally insane. And here we have yet another, I'm not a doctor or anything, but Biden is flying off the handle when people are bringing in simple information to the president of the United States. Is that not a symptom of his elderly deterioration? If it isn't, I don't know what is. Well, other than his inability to speak at almost every public event he does. All right. David is calling in from Fairfax, line 1. David, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince.
Hi, David.
I see that ABC News chief there, George Stephanopoulos, is going to interview Biden, but it will not air live. Why do you think that would be?
My first hunch is the one that I think you have, David, which is that they're just creating an environment where they pretend like he did a real serious interview, and now they can cut out all the stuff where he looks like an idiot, right?
So they'll just edit it to no end to make him look good.
Yes, that is a good suspicion.
That's my hunch.
But let me posit, David, the opposite for a moment, because I think there's a chance here that this is going to go in the opposite direction. Here's why. Stephanopoulos is an establishment Democrat. Stephanopoulos wants Democrats to win in November. That's his desire. He's a Clinton administration alum. He's as establishment as it gets. When it comes to this moment, the left is very rapidly, and that includes the media, turning on Biden because they see him as an impediment to power. I think it is possible that Biden is walking into a buzzsaw that he doesn't expect, or the White House doesn't expect this week. You're right. It is a taped interview. It is set to air on Sunday. But there's a possibility here that the incentives are built such that Stephanopoulos will see this as a chance for, one, his own ego, a chance to make history, a chance to get big ratings, a chance to save the Democrats in November. We may very well see him try and take Biden down this week. I'm not ruling that out now because I'm watching the left very closely, and there may be something very interesting afoot. So you're right. It's on tape, but something interesting could happen, David.
Yeah, you could be right.
We'll see. We'll see. It's all going to happen very soon. That's the way time works. It passes, things occur, and then we talk about it. A lot more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Good afternoon. 535 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. So much chaos going on. The left has the knives out for Joe Biden. Nancy Pelosi going on national television today declaring it's time for a cognitive exam for Biden, and that his mental lapses on Thursday were perhaps not just an episode, but instead a, quote, condition that he has. Meanwhile, NBC reporting today, Hunter Biden is sitting in on all of Joe Biden's meetings now, hand-holding him through them. And Democrats are all coming out of the woodwork to attack the White House, saying that they're so insular. They're not taking any advice. There's only a small group of family members in charge of this whole thing, and we're going to lose in the election. For more on all of this, a guy who's very familiar with presidential politics joins us now, former Governor Scott Walker, president of the Young America's Foundation, former governor of Wisconsin. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be with you.
Have you ever seen anything like this in your entire life?
Not by a long shot. It's actually sad, not just in the campaign. It's sad for America.
Yeah.
The leader of the free world apparently is someone who can only, at best, take care of about 6 hours of work each day. I don't know about you, but I don't have many jobs in America where you can be on 6 hours and somehow be viewed as performing. It's just a sad set of circumstances.
And then get paid $400,000 a year for that, that short work day that you're barely doing. Yeah, in fact, there's a report out from the New York Times today, Governor Walker, saying that during that debate prep week, he didn't even begin until 11 a.m., and then they would prep him a little bit, and then he would have an afternoon nap. So he's not even working as much as they claim he was working.
Well, and again, it's I wish we weren't just talking about this. It's bad enough, but I think on top of it, somehow, even if he got this burst, if it was short-lived, which I don't think it is, I was on the other day on CNN of all places, and Carl Bernstein was on talking about a report he's done that showed the people he talked to have said this has been the case for quite some time. Said how ironic the guy that exposed the cover-up of Watergate is now exposing the cover-up by the White House and Democrats and others for something that the rest of us have been saying for some time.
Yes.
But on top of all this, even if it wasn't cognitive, his ideas are awful. That's the part I wish we could spend more time talking about. It's not just that he's checked out. His ideas don't work. High prices, a horrible economy, border security, public safety issues. These are problems, whether it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or any of these others who share the same ideological views.
And all of those Democrats that you're referencing, and that includes the American news media, they have enabled the tyranny, first of all, at the hands of the Biden administration, and they've enabled Biden himself, despite the fact that he's non-compos mentis. They knew that he didn't have the capacity for this. They treated us like garbage for saying it out loud, Governor Walker. But they knew, and they should wear the stench of this, including after they replaced Joe Biden.
Oh, 100%. I mean, think about this. They sang his praises because he didn't, trip up over the teleprompter at the State of the Union. They had that guy so jacked up on drugs. All he had to do was read. And when he doesn't have a teleprompter, he obviously falls apart. The next day, somebody writes a good speech. He sounds reasonably good. The media says, oh, well, maybe it was short-lived. No, this is not Barack Obama in that first debate back in the 2012 election where who knows what it was, high altitude, not paying attention. That's something that's not unusual for an incumbent. Because remember, debates have nothing to do with being president. Nobody ever debates when they're president except when they run for re-election. Having said that, though, the concern is not that Joe Biden can't debate. The concern is that Joe Biden can't put a series of sentences together after the first couple questions out there. That should concern anyone because it's happening in the Oval Office, not just on the debate stage.
Right, and that has big implications for our national security and everything else. On the issues, because you're an issues guy, you are, again, with YAF, Young America's Foundation, and there's a new survey out showing what young people think about the issues. What are their priorities? The left constantly says that young people are obsessed with aborting babies. Is that what your survey found?
Not at all true. That's the amazing thing. And I know we're going to get fact-checked, PolitiFact, whatever you want to call it. Our last poll that came out last August showed that we were 100% right. This is going to show it as well. Nationwide, large sample poll of college and high school students, not the ones we work with, of the entire general population, by a landslide. The number one issue is the economy. Abortion, LGBTQ plus whatever rights are like at the bottom of the top 10. They're not even in the top couple out there. People in college and even high school voting age, young people, are overwhelmingly have the same anxiety, the same concerns that people all across America do. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about high prices. They're concerned about, having a job, buying a home. To me, this is the reason why I hope that President Trump pivots and just says, it's sad what we see with Joe Biden. Let's move on from that. I'm not going to beat up at him. What I'm going to tell you is these policies have failed us, and here's what I'm going to do to get America working again, to make it affordable again, to get us secure again, to get us safe again. Those are the things young people at YF.org, if people are interested in the poll. The other interesting thing is students, even before the debate when this poll was taken, just days before, they were already overwhelmingly saying this guy doesn't have the mental capacity to serve as the president. They didn't see him as listening to their concerns. If college students are saying this, Joe Biden's in big trouble.
Yeah, there's now, 3/4 of the country thinks that Joe Biden is not mentally fit to be president of the United States. But I think I know you're bringing up a very important issue here, which is that the reason America is in a shambles right now is not merely Biden's failing mind. It's the policies of the left. And the job of those of us on the right, and in particular the political apparatus of the Republican Party, is to make it really clear to the American voter who has brought this damage upon them, because no matter who they replace Joe Biden with, they should have to own the chaos that we're living through.
More of the same, right? I mean, Gavin Newsom, look at the absolute mess the state of California is. It just gets worse and worse and worse, and you have the media treats him like the golden child out there. You look at Kamala Harris, who can't, I mean, she doesn't even have the excuse of age. She can't put together anything more than a word salad because they don't want to talk about the issues because they don't have good answers. This was the woman who was named the czar of the border. The border has never been more dangerous, never been more open. And again, when you talk to voters out there, other than their number one concern, the economy, right after that becomes the border, not because it's a border crisis, because it's a national security crisis. You know, when you know kids who are dying of overdoses at 15 because of things like fentanyl, they know that something's got to happen out there. And you get that, you get border security on top of just basic public safety, which is not just a Biden issue. It's every hardcore liberal district attorney pushed by George Soros who's letting out these criminals early. These are all things that people can see. They don't need a campaign to tell them. They can see with their own eyes. And not only should Donald Trump, former President Trump, talk about it, but every single conservative in America should be holding these liberals accountable for all the bad things that are happening, and then pivot back to how we fix it. We know we can fix it.
Yep.
Things were much, much better 4 years ago.
You know, it's not just your YAF survey, which is an excellent survey that has found that young people find that the most important issues are the economy and immigration. It's also all of the available polling we keep seeing. I think this is an underappreciated detail on the right now, but among the youngest voters, they are siding with Trump. That's a story that so few have told, but why is that, in your view, Governor Walker, in all of your work? What have you discovered about young voters and why they're headed in Trump's direction right now?
Well, I think it's a matter of authenticity. You know, the left is so focused on attacking based on personality that they haven't defended their positions. People now, it's one of the side benefits, I guess, of social media, which has its troubles, certainly. But increasingly, particularly since Elon Musk took over X, young people can see for themselves, just like every American can, but particularly for young people, they can see the absolute invasion going on our southern borders. They can connect the dots and see when they hear about classmates, friends, neighbors, and others dying of overdoses from fentanyl. Yeah. That's fentanyl coming over the border. They can see when they go fill up their gas tanks. They can see when they go to the grocery store. They can see for those who've got, just out of college, have a job, thinking about starting a family, buying a home.
Right.
They can see the impact. My kids are in their 20s. My son and his daughter-in-law are going to pay almost $1,000 more a month in their mortgage than they would have when Donald Trump was the president. You can't convince them otherwise. All the ads in the world, all the financial advantage don't work when they can see it for themselves. And this generation, Generation X in particular, and even some of the younger millennials, they, more than anything, like authenticity, and authenticity is on our side. Yeah,
and also young people are often attacked for being idealistic and not knowing history, but you don't have to know that much history to know what it was like under Trump. All you have to remember is 4 years ago. You can, and it's a pretty straightforward analysis. You're like, actually, things were better just a couple years back.
Exactly. I mean, we can talk about Carter and Reagan, and that gives people hope that, again, with the right leadership, it can change. But they have immediate history, and I think it's one of those where the more people look, the more they open their eyes, the less it's going to be successful for Joe Biden and his allies.
All right. Scott Walker, and who's going to win Wisconsin this year, by the way? I just want to check in on that question.
The best public poll taken just a week ago was Marquette University Law School. It has, in a ballot test, including Kennedy and the other third-party candidates, Trump 43, Biden 40, the others obviously down. That's where I think it's at today, unless there's a titanic shift. And you win Wisconsin, you're the next president of the United States.
Yeah, these past few years, Wisconsin's been a nail-biter. It sounds like it's not going to be if things hold. Governor Walker, thank you very much. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you.
That's Governor Scott Walker, now with the Young America's Foundation. Good to have him with us today. As always, let me see here. I'm going to bring in Dennis from Annapolis, who's calling in on line 3. Dennis is a doctor and wants to weigh in on everything we're seeing out of the White House today. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. I'm still trying to figure out. I caught part of the discussion about Biden getting a so-called neurological scan, and I'm not quite sure what that is. I mean, that could be multiple different things. That could be an MRI, a CT scan, a PET scan. Who knows? I'm still trying to figure that out.
Let me, Dennis, let me play it a little bit so people can hear it, and then I want to get your reaction to it. This is a reporter asking Karine Jean-Pierre today, did Biden get a neurological scan after the debate?
After the debate, did the president get examined by a doctor, or did he get a neurological scan?
A neurological scan? Look, what I can say is that, just to take a step back.
And then she went on for like a full minute and said nothing. But she didn't say yes or no that the doctors looked closely at Biden after that performance. What did you think of all of this, Dennis?
I think it was like a look-see. Yeah, I'm still confused because I still don't know what she means by a neurological scan. I'm perplexed. Maybe, Nancy Pelosi was calling for Biden to have a cognitive exam. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, she's calling for Biden and Trump to have cognitive exams today. But what that really means is she's calling for Biden to be subjected to a cognitive test.
Yeah. Why wasn't she talking to Dr. Kevin O'Connor last February when he released his annual physical exam and glaringly omitted a cognitive exam? Everybody in the country knows Biden needs a cognitive exam, apparently, except Biden's Dr. Kevin O'Connor. I just can't figure that out.
Don't you think, though, Dennis? Like, we don't really need the cognitive exam. We've kind of done it already, haven't we? Like Thursday was a perfect cognitive exam. I think we have all the data we need, don't we?
Oh yeah. I think we have enough knowledge now that we can assess things by ourselves.
Yeah, Congress should get in touch with the White House and say, hey, you remember the Robert Hur tapes we were asking for? No big deal. We don't actually need them anymore. We're good. Yeah. We're covered.
Actually, he kind of did a cognitive exam. Instead of Dr. Kevin O'Connor, he actually kind of did one for us.
Yeah. You mean his debate performance?
With his report. Yeah, he kind of did one.
Oh, Robert Hur. Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, Robert Hur did. Right,
yeah.
right.
That's
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and he's not even a medical doctor.
No, he's not. But he definitely demonstrated what's going on upstairs. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate the call.
Thanks, Vince.
From the good doctor. There's Dennis in Annapolis wondering what the hell, just like the rest of us, what the hell's going on? It's kind of an interesting theory, assessment. There's a guy on X. He goes by Maudie480. I don't even know who he is, but he's got Donald Trump's mugshot in his profile. He says the Donald Trump of 2020 and 2016 would not have had the discipline and restraint to remain radio silent while his opponent's campaign and party are plummeting downward nonstop with each news headline. He might be right about that, actually. There's no Truth Social posts about every iteration of all the chaos going on here on the left. And notice President Trump's behavior at the debate on Thursday. Every time when Biden was failing on stage, President Trump just let it happen. The only thing he did was like just glance over a couple times, like, huh. Like he was just watching his opponent self-immolate, and he's like, okay, all right, I'll just let that thing breathe for a moment. And so he does it over and over, and it of course worked. It worked really well for him. Have you, Scott Walker, Governor Walker just mentioned a moment ago that Carl Bernstein has been reporting on things that the media refused to tell you before, but now wants to tell you because they want to get rid of Biden. Here's Carl Bernstein on CNN this week saying, yeah, it's worse than we've ever told you.
These are people, several of them, who are very close to President Biden, who love him, have supported him, have been among them are some people who have raised a lot of money for him. And they are adamant that what we saw the other night, the Joe Biden we saw, is not a one-off, that there have been 15, 20 occasions in the last year and a half when the president has appeared somewhat as he did in that horror show that we witnessed. And what's so significant is the people that this is coming from, and also how many people around the president.
It's got to be way more than 15 to 20. Oh, our luck. We caught him in one of the 20 times this year.
Are aware of such incidents, including some reporters, incidentally, who have witnessed some of them. But here we see tonight, as these people say, President Biden at his absolute best. And yet, these people who have supported him, loved him, campaigned for him, see him often, say that in the last 6 months particularly, there has been a marked incidence of cognitive decline and physical infirmity.
You know something? I think I know what's going on here. Carl Bernstein is really a tool of the establishment. This isn't just like, oh, it was tenacious digging, and he was like, I just found out. Let me share with you. Biden is failing. This happens all the time, dozens of times. No, Carl Bernstein is a loyal little servant of the establishment. He's being called in to help manufacture the hit. Here it is. I got to tell you, that guy can barely think. We have to replace him. Keep your head on a swivel. Very interesting things are happening. We're living through interesting times. And boy, the left is desperate to hold on for power. Hold on to power. That's really the whole, that's the way you manage all of this. How does this help the left get power? That's the core question. Cui bono. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.